As a young boy, Lucian Cap was always wondering why people were climbing the light posts and curiously wandering up and down the street where his family lived, taking pictures.
I realized in later years these were architectural students from the University of Illinois on a field trip photographing from our light posts and such. And we still have people from all over the world coming to the street, not in buses like the U of I did, but coming as separate individuals, and we're always interested in sharing the history of the street, because it is probably not just a unique street in our region, but it's totally a unique street in the history of American architecture.
The street he's referring to is Millikin Place, adjacent to the Millikin Homestead, an island all its own in the heart of Decatur, Illinois. The unique street of homes is built on land Anna Millikin made available for construction of it in the early 1900s. The Millikin name lives on through the street, but according to Lucian, that's where the departure begins.
The most interesting thing is probably what didn't happen on Millikin Place. Frank Lloyd Wright was contracted to design 3 prairie houses on Millikin Place. This didn't happen. He made a strategic move to go to Europe with his mistress, Mamie Bortmouth Cheney, in the fall of 1909, and he left commissions in Decatur, Illinois, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in Mason City, Iowa, and also Henry Ford's house that was also contracted to Wright was left on his drawing boards in Oak Park. And in a frenzy of several days, he divested himself of his practice in Chicago, raised money for his trip to Europe, and turned over these commissions to a German architect, second generation immigrant architect by the name of Hermann von Holst. Hermann von Holst was a Beaux-Arts architect that had sympathy with the Prairie School, but he was not a Prairie School architect. And here he had all of these commissions for prairie houses over the Midwest, and so he reached out to find someone to help him with the design of the houses, and that was Marion Lucy Mahoney, who was the first woman licensed to practice architecture in the state of Illinois, the second woman to graduate in architecture from MIT in 1894. So she is really a titan of American architecture and of being the first woman to be this deeply involved in serious architectural practice.
Mahoney became the power behind Millikin Place and eventually brought on Walter Burley Griffin to complete the landscape design. But what still has caused confusion throughout the history of the street is where the credit for the houses lies.
There is a new book on our street, Marion Mahoney and Millikin Place, authored by Paul Crudy, the University of Illinois Architectural Faculty, and Paul Sprague, formerly of the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. And it is the best extant information we have on the history of Millikin Place. And so we are all learning a little bit and trying to correct any misinformation we've harbored for decades. When people were asking at the time of Frank Lloyd Wright's death about the houses on Millikin Place, they assumed we had 3 Frank Lloyd Wright houses here. What we really have is 1 Frank Lloyd Wright house, number 2 Millikin Place, which is credited to Wright because he took it through the blueprint stages, and the other 2 prairie houses credited to Wright and Marion Mahoney, and then number 4 Millikin Place, the Adolph Mueller home, totally credited to Marion Mahoney. So we have it in tandem with the Millikin Homestead forming really a de facto architectural park.
Millikin Place is a public street, so anyone is welcome to come and take their own visual tour by car, bike, or foot. On rare and special occasions, some of the homes are open for tours.
There are lots of walking tours, and that's great. The owners of the houses have opened them up for certain tours, and especially support groups from places like the Dana House in Springfield and the Frank Lloyd Wright studio and home in Oak Park. But It's up to the individual homeowners how wide open they want to keep their doors. It's not an easy thing to do. So yes, the street is totally available to the public. The interior of the houses remain an option with the individual owners.
There are 7 houses in Millikin Place. The first 4 were built between 1910 and 1912, and the last 3 between 1921 and 25. Millikin Place is on the National Register of Historic Places and was later encompassed by a larger historic district in the portion of Decatur. But the status of Millikin Place hasn't always been so certain.
So Millikin Place's future is unsure because we were zoned R6 for multifamily habitation, and the house at the end of our lane had been sold and was going to be duplexed and apartments built on maybe one side of it. We had to literally fight to keep our street together, and now its zoning is back to R2, single family. But it's been a real effort to keep the architectural park together. And once we had fended off the threats to the street, then we started thinking about restoration of the light fixtures and such, and you get into situations where entire electrical systems have to be replaced. The original 1910 underground cables and such were lead sheathed cables. All that had to be replaced with modern electrical conduit. And then the street lamps themselves had to be restored. We're still in that process of taking them apart, sandblasting, putting them back together, replacing broken parts. And then occasionally a pickup truck will crash through our entrance down here, and when that happens, my phone rings at 3 in the morning, and the police want to know what the owner wants to do about the situation. So there's always something happening in trying to maintain the street, and we do this also as a free will type of thing. The neighbors are not required to participate in the upkeep of the street, but it's all by their goodwill that we keep things together.